Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the APMP Georgia Chattahoochee chapter webinar. I'm Michelle Kidd. I'm the social media and marketing chair of our chapter. Thank you for joining. We're happy to have you with us. I hope that everyone can see my screen as well as the drop down where you can enter your questions, raise your hand. We'll have a question and answer session at the end, but if you have things that you want to ask throughout, you're welcome to do that as well. Today's webinar is titled Finding Work-Life Balance in an Unbalanced World, which will focus on actionable steps we can take to find more balance in our lives, which I'm sure we can all use. I'm very excited to introduce our speaker today. Bruce Farrell is a proposal and presentation specialist for the management consulting group Plant Moran. He has been working in business communications and development for over 20 years. Bruce has designed documents for a variety of organizations and frequently speaks to groups about print, presentation, and web design. Bruce currently serves on the APMP International Board of Directors and serves as co-chair of the Chapter Liaison Committee. He's also a board member of the Greater Midwest chapter, which encompasses 12 states. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us today, Bruce, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. So, as Michelle said, this is Finding Balance in an Unbalanced World. This is a session that I talked with about Rick Harris last year and delivered at our chapter symposium. And he was wondering why this topic, because as it turns out, work-life balance is something that is an area of focus for APMP International. It's one of the things that we've heard kind of on an ongoing basis from our membership, that work-life balance for a lot of us is a struggle. And in what ways can APMP provide solutions, relief in some way to people who are struggling with this, and I think a lot of us obviously do. So actually, there we go. Let me get my clicker in the right place. My clicker's not working. Okay then. So let's talk really how I got here and why this is important to me. Again, I talked about this. I talked about a different topic. I actually talked about finding your career path at the APMP symposium. This is probably going back several years, although I did talk about it again this year. I think this is actually a crowd shot of my speech. It was a lot of fun. We had a good time. But a natural tangent to you're finding your career path is establishing some level of work-life balance, because all of us need to find a comfortable work-life balance to really be successful in our career. I don't think you'll find many people who would say they're successful, or maybe feel like they're successful, and are entirely burnt out. So while I was talking about a career path, I ended up on this tangent. There was a gentleman up front who's been around for a long time, and I'm not going to name names. Here's your stand-in. He was pretty grumpy, and he said that work-life balance wasn't possible. He said our profession just requires so much from its people that we couldn't reasonably expect anything like balance, and if you're in this field, that ship has flown. And I wasn't quite sure what to say, because that's just a lot of horse hockey. That's just not at all true. I think that there are people who get run over in our field by their jobs, just as there are in many other fields. But I've been able to find work-life balance in my life, and I know people in our field who are successful in our field. In every business sector, federal, commercial, state, local, who've been able to find work-life balance. So I don't buy that it's not true. I just don't. That's a myth. Then last year in May, I had a discussion at the Proposal Con. I was on a panel to talk about this very topic, work-life balance, and it's kind of an interesting session. We ended up getting caught down some rabbit holes, I think. And one of them, we got caught in a lengthy discussion with a few people who worked in the federal sector, I believe, and they were completely buried by their jobs. So being the panelists, the ones with the solutions, we tried to provide them with some solutions on how they could better find work-life balance. And every time we made a suggestion, they would swat it away and say, our employer won't let us do that. Oh, well, you know, if we're talking about hiring more people, yeah, we can't hire more people. If we're talking about taking time off, yeah, we can't take time off. And all of these things kind of led me to say that, you know, maybe that isn't the right job then, you know, because I don't know what, if your job is broken, if your job isn't going to enable you to have any level of work-life balance, and that's important to you, then maybe you chose the wrong job, which is a tough thing to say, but I think it's something that people need to consider. I'm not telling anybody here to quit their job, but you know, the employer-employee relationship it goes both ways. It goes both ways, and I've always chosen jobs that I thought would provide work-life balance because it's always been important to me. So all of this discussion around work-life balance made me want to dig a little bit deeper. It wanted me to think about, why is it important to me, and why is it so hard for some people to get, and what are some of the people who know more than I do saying about establishing work-life balance? Because again, I've been able to hit it. I've always had a good work-life balance, not because I'm a workaholic, but because I've made it a priority. It was very important for me to coach my son's Little League team because my dad did that for me, and I wanted to be able to do that for him. It was really important for me to be a Scoutmaster, even though I wasn't a Boy Scout and had nothing about it. That isn't my son, by the way. That's David Pellerito. He got married a few months ago because I'm old. I love to travel places with my lovely and talented wife. I'm a musician who writes, records, and performs music. And all of those things are possible. I'm able to do all of those things because I make them a priority. It's why I choose the job I choose. It's why I'm able to put down work and do the things that I love and that I'm passionate about. So I hope that I'm able to help some of you find enough balance, certainly find as much as I've had. Not that I've figured it all out, but I'm in a pretty good place. Really quick introduction. My name is Bruce Farrell. I work at Plant Moran. I've had a mustache since I was in high school. I grew up in a place called Hazel Park, Michigan. If you've ever seen My Name is Earl or Trailer Park Boys, you pretty much know Hazel Park, Michigan. Not that's a bad thing necessarily. Again, I play music, which means I play guitar, I play keyboard, and sometimes I kind of do them both at once. And I'm on the international board of APMP, where I've gotten to meet tons and tons of great people. If you ever have a chance to attend an APMP event, a local greet up, whatever, please do so, because to me, that's what the big value of APMP is, in its people. And I've made so many great friendships and with people who are smarter than me. And I've just learned a ton from them. So that's kind of a plug for that. I've been to the last 8 APMP bid proposal cons. If you follow me around, you will find the cool people, and sometimes things will get a little weird. If you want the original picture for this, I can send it to you. So that's a little bit about me. Let's go back to balance. The first thing I want you to do today is think about things that work for you, okay? I want you to think about things that either work for you or you know to work for others. And I'd like to give you an opportunity to share them. I'm going to go through kind of the things that I've learned and try to back them up. But then what I'd really like you to do, and I'll tell you when, basically, is I'll open the floor, and if anybody's got something to share, that would be fantastic, okay? This is not an exhaustive list. So my goals today are to, first, let's talk about what's at stake. You know, why is work-life balance important, and how are things moving? I'll give you some tips, and then I'll give you guys an opportunity to share. So, are there any questions at this point, Michelle? Anything I need to answer?
Let me take a look. Nope, I don't see any.
Cool. So, in prep for this, I actually did a lot of studying. So, I went to business, sources. I went to medical sources. I went to psych sources. I read as much as I could about work-life balance so that I could kind of understand what's in play, and then also what kind of tips were being provided. What works for other people? I know what works for me, but what works for other people so that I could share them with you. Now, in studying this, I found out there's some good news and there's some bad news. The good news, and obviously bacon represents good news, is that there are many, many more work-life initiatives than there were 15, 20 years ago. which is great because, you know, I remember when I started working, which, you know, let's go back to the 80s, and, you know, the idea of companies having things like, you know, daycare centers at work, or, you know, providing the opportunity to work from home, or take flexible time off, or things like that, they didn't exist. But now a lot of them do, and they're gaining more momentum. More and more companies are providing, so that's great news. What's more, they're finding that every time they do these work-life initiatives, shareholders see an increase in returns, which means that's why they're gathering so much momentum. In fact, what they found was when they studied Fortune 500 firms, each major initiative, work-life initiative that they present yields on average an additional $60 million in return, which is fantastic for us, right? So now companies are being incented to do that because they're seeing an increase in their profit margins, which is just fantastic. So again, in addition to increased profit, they're seeing more performance and more growth. Firms with a wider range of work-life practices had greater performance, profit sales growth, and organizational performance. That's based on research, okay? So if you're looking to, you know, push your company towards more work-life initiatives, there's a lot of evidence that says that they increase profits and they're good for the organization. So keep that in mind. From our standpoint, and from the employer standpoint, there's research to suggest that each of these work-life initiatives increases the attachment that employees have with their organization. It makes them more loyal and more committed to the organization. Again, that's backed up by research. And I actually have the research, and I'll share that. That's embedded in my notes for this. So it's good for everybody. Honestly, we can kind of thank the millennials for that. And I know millennials get a bad rap. I don't know why. I work with a lot of them, and they're really smart, and they work really hard, at least the ones that I work with. And they kind of demand it. They prioritize work-life balance in a way that people of my generation, I'm like the very last month of the baby boom, really did. I don't think that we did at all. I think I'm an outlier in a lot of ways. So all of these things that are coming to fruition are really because employees now are demanding it, which is great. And companies, as we know, are catering to them. You see all of these surveys come out that say that, oh, you know, our company is one of the top 2,500 whatever companies for millennials. I know that that's been published on Plant Moran's website a lot because I think we're a millennial-friendly company, whatever that means. Now, why would they do that? This kind of surprised me, but by 2025, 75% rather of our workforce will be millennials. And that kind of surprised me. I didn't know it would be that much that soon. But that's why companies like Plant Moran, and probably a lot of your companies, are catering to millennials, is because they know that that's who the workplace will be. That's who's going to, workforce rather, that's who's going to be their employees for the near future. So that's all good news. Unfortunately, there's some bad news. And as a Lions fan, I know all about bad news. First, I read a research study on workplace behavior and treatment, and what it found was 82% of employees feel they're overworked and burnout, and 72% are emotionally exhausted. That's kind of remarkable. That seems startlingly high to me, that 82% of full-time workers feel like they're overworked and burnt out. And I don't think our industry is, I think our industry is about here, just based on conversations that I've had, which is bad news. The average full-time American worker works 47 hours a week, and 40% of people are working more than 50 hours. And I think that's also probably in keeping with our industry. I think that might be a little low, but that's a lot of hours, especially when there's research that says you don't get more productive after 40 hours. I mean, you know, there's a lot of research that says if workers work less and more focused, they're actually more productive, but that's another thing. Right now, people are working 47 hours a week on average. People don't use their vacation time This stunned me because I use every minute that I can get. 54% of workers left vacation days unused, which added up to 66 million vacation days in the US that are being unused. And that's criminal. Those days are yours, take them. I just on a whim, I found out that North Dakota, 61% left vacation days unused. Indiana, 40%. Who knew? I would have guessed it was the other way around. Family dinner, it's gone. 57% of people no longer eat a family dinner because people are too busy. They're doing different things. The cost of work-life balance, this is from the Mayo Clinic. Fatigue, poor health, lost time with family and friends, increased expectations. And we'll kind of get back to that. But if you let your work life get out of balance, then people will expect you to work more. They will expect your work life to be out of balance. It was kind of the conversation that I had with the two women that I'm thinking about at Bid Proposal Con last year, was their employers expected them to not take vacation time. They expected them to work a zillion hours, and they expected to do more without hiring more people, because that was the expectation, that the employees said, yeah, that's fine. We don't like it, but we're going to do it. Yeah, so these are all things that are a cost of work life being out of balance. Life out of balance can cause hypertension. That's proved by research. Chronic aches and pains, heart problems. Who wants those? Depression, anxiety, insomnia, just bad stuff, bad mojo. Again, there's loads of research that says if you're out of balance, if you're working too much, it is not good for your health. So, how important is maintaining balance? We kind of got that. I learned from one of my mentors. This is Ron Schell. He really helped me define my career and put me on what I would call an intentional path. And he told me two things that have stuck with me and have kind of driven my career in a lot of ways. And the first thing was, the stakes are high. Because if you're not happy, if you're not healthy, you're not going to look back on those years fondly. You're not going. Nobody looks back and thinks, well, I wish I would have worked a lot more. Maybe, I can't think of many people who would think that. And you only get one shot at this, right? You get one life. You need to make the most of it. And the other thing is that you're responsible for it. If you don't take work-life balance seriously, then others won't take it seriously for you either. If people see that you're a workaholic, then they will assume that you are so, and they won't try to help you. You won't be able to find that balance. You're responsible for that, so just something to keep in mind. So, what can we do? What are the tips? Here's some tips I'm going to give you that can help you with work-life balance, and I hope that some of them are actionable, and I'll try to dwell on some that I think have really worked for me. And the first and most important thing is you need to define balance for you, because I saw some TED Talks, and I've read some articles that suggest that work-life balance is possible, or that it's not realistic, that it's like a myth, or that work-life balance is almost doesn't mean anything because work and life are one and the same. Because work is part of life. I get that, but I think that's semantics. I really do. However you define it, though, what works for me may not work for you. And let me give you one example of two people who define work-life balance very differently. Let's call them Bruce and Jeannie, and let's just say they're married. Bruce, the way I define balance is, the way I work at balance rather is, I work about a 14-hour day. And people say, well, how can your life possibly be balanced? Well, I don't actually work 14 hours, but I work from the time I get up till I go to sleep. The difference is I work in 1 or 2 hour spurts. So I'll get up at 9, let's say, because I can, and then I'll work until 11-ish maybe, and then I'll have lunch, and then maybe I'll go to the gym, and then I'll work for a couple of hours, and then I'll stop, and then I'll go, play some guitar, or go on a run, or go to the zoo with my wife, or whatever. And I do that throughout the day. I really only work about 8 hours a day, but my work and play life kind of intersect a lot. And that works really well for me. It enables me to do everything that I really want to do, and yet not be overwhelmed with work. That works well for me. Jeannie can't do that. She's not wired that way. She's now retired, but before she was retired, she would go into the office at 8, and she'd come home at 5, and then she was done. That was that. She could not ever take work calls at home. She couldn't do any work stuff at home. It was like this hard line in the sand, hat on, hat off. And that works really well for her. Now, neither one of us understands how it works for each other, but we've each found balance in our own way. You need to find what works for you. And for some reason, these crazy kids made it work. The second thing, and I suppose this is pretty obvious, is you should unplug. Unplug when you're not at work. Just step away. And of course, I'm saying that, you realize I just told you that I work a 14-hour day. I don't work a 14-hour day. When I step away, I step away. So don't answer your email. Turn off your cell phone. I would say step away from the TV, because the TV isn't something that people are usually very passionate about, unless it's a genuine hobby or for some reason. I think that there's a lot of value in just unplugging, just being in the moment, whatever you happen to be doing, if that's, taking a walk, if that's reading a book, unplug. There's a lot of evidence that says that people who are constantly plugged in have more trouble with work-life balance, because it's harder for them to turn away work. It's harder for them to focus on anything because they're constantly checking their devices. So just step away. This isn't really, set boundaries is one that I think is really, really important. And it's something that people in our field sometimes struggle with, certainly young people. And I think that's probably true across the board, is young people don't really want to say no, because they, you want to build your career. So you want to take those opportunities. You don't want to have your boss, think that you can't do it all. Although you can't do it all, I'm here to tell you, as a boss and an employee. So you need to set boundaries with your workers and your coworkers and the people around you. Is, what will you or won't you do? Okay. What are you willing to do? What aren't you willing to do? When does work end, and under what circumstances? And then how firm are those boundaries? And let me give you an example. I'm a night owl, and I work at night, and I have a team in India, and I'm frequently on the phone with them at midnight because I'm a night owl. That's no problem. So sometimes I usually don't go to bed until like 1 a.m., 1:30, something like that. Because I'm actually more productive in those hours. So my boss and the people that I work with know that. So they don't schedule meetings for 7 o'clock in the morning. You'll never, well, never's a long time. You will very rarely find 7 o'clock meetings on my calendar, because the people I work with know that I'm not going to be there, and that it's not fair to me, to schedule those meetings. So they schedule them for later. That's how they do it. Now, how firm is that boundary? It's pretty firm. Now, if it's the only time I can meet with 2 or 3 partners, let's say, or a client, although I very rarely deal with clients, okay, it's not that firm. But as a general rule, people know. I think that you need to have those kind of boundaries with the people that you work with. And that includes when you'll take work calls, which is, I guess, another example that, I think my boss knows if I have, if she knows I'm not working, she's not going to bother me unless it's critical. That's how firm that boundary is. If there's something critical that I have to get to that second, genuinely critical, then she knows that she can cross that boundary, but otherwise she doesn't. You need to have that kind of relationship with your boss and the people that you work with. Just, a general understanding of, when I'm not at work, this is what, these are the boundaries. And then I guess attached to that with what will you or won't you do, that's just a general work thing. I think that sets up with work-life balance, because if you end up doing a lot of jobs or tasks that you don't like to do, then you're more likely to be stressed at work, which is going to make it harder for you to find a balance. Find a hobby. I'm probably not Beanie Babies, although I did have a friend who did that. But find a hobby. Find something to fill your time. It doesn't, nature abhors a vacuum. This is one of my friends says this all the time, and it's true. If there's space in your life, something will fill it. And if you're not intentional about it, it'll either be work or it'll be something that you probably don't care that much about. It can really be anything. But here's a key point, and I'm going to have it in a slightly different color so that, I guess, to show you that it's important. Find something that you're passionate about. Find something that matters to you. Because if you find something that you're passionate about, if you find a hobby, whether it's photography or music, or true crime, or whatever, don't commit crimes. I have friends who are into true crime, which kind of strikes me as funny. But if you find something that you're passionate about and you set time aside to do it, then you'll guard it. You'll guard it. And if you have those things set aside that you can enjoy and be unstressed and be not stressed, you will make time for it. That's why it's so important. So don't just fill your time with passive things. Don't just say, well, I've got some time off, and then you go sit in a corner or go watch TV. Not that watching TV is not always a bad thing, but if it's filling all your time, it's really easy for work to creep into that. Find a passion. Take time management seriously. It's funny because I have not always been a very good time manager, and I would argue that I'm still not really good at it. But I've gotten better at it because I found that it makes finding time for the things that I'm passionate about easier. So, most days on my calendar from 2 to 3 is blocked. That's blocked because from 2 to 3 I go to the gym with my wife. Now, people do sometimes schedule a meeting in that time, and I can go to the gym a little later, a little earlier, but I'm using time management tools to help guard my private time. But if you're really managing your time well, I think you will find that you're getting things done more quickly. So you're probably being more productive in less time. So you're more efficient. And I guess related to that is, I think if you set goals for yourself on, I want to get control of this part of my work life, and you set a goal to do it, then you're more likely to do it. Time management is a critical aspect of that. Kind of related to time management, and here's a tip. One of the things that I read in research for this was that if you have any task, any small task, or a big task, I guess, that takes 10 minutes or less, just do it now. Just do it. Just do it right then. Don't put it on your calendar. Don't say I'm going to do it later. Just do it. And then it's off your plate. It's not stressing you. It's done. It's a good use of your time. Get that stuff done. I started applying this, and I found that I'm forgetting much less because, I can forget things. And if I just put it off till later, I'm never going to get it done, or it'll be way late. So just get that stuff done now. It's less stressful. It's just all good. Related to that is know what to let go. Another friend of mine likes to say that perfection is the enemy of good enough. And I think that perfection is important in some things. I don't want a proposal to go out with typos, for example. But if you're always waiting for things to be perfect, then it's really hard to get things done and to be efficient. And that's something that I honestly struggled with for most of my career, that I always wanted to be perfect, and I'm just waiting to release something, let's say, until it's perfect. And, that's not very productive. It's not an efficient use of my time. And don't multitask. If any of you have seen me speak at did ProposalCon or delivered webinars, I talk about the fact that we actually aren't wired to multitask. Your brain can't do it. Even people who think they're really good at multitasking aren't. In fact, they're more likely to be bad at it. So don't multitask. If you do try, you are less productive. That's all I can tell you. You're less able to focus on specific tasks, and you're less likely to get things done. So you're much better off trying to do one thing at a time well, rather than doing a lot of things at once. Deal with what's in front of you and not what's in your peripheral, and you'll be more productive and have more time. Loads and loads of research that says that you need to get yourself up and moving. I think everybody now is, everybody at my office is talking about how sitting is the new smoking, which I think is probably an exaggeration, but I get the point. It certainly is better for you to get up and moving, and there's a lot of research that backs that up. So that means you should get up and exercise. You should just get up and move. Anytime you do that, it's a good thing. When I need to go to the restroom, I actually go on another floor if I need to, just so that I can get up and moving. When I have anybody that I need to talk to who's in my building, and our building's not that small, I will walk over them, see them rather than call them, just so that I can get up and move. Because otherwise I can, because I'm a writer and I'm a designer, if I'm just doing my work, I would literally be sitting the entire time at work. Or I work from home a lot, same thing. If I'm back in the office working, unless I remind myself to get up, I could be in this chair all day. And that's not good for you. It's not good for your heart. It's not good for your lungs. It's not good for anything. So get up and move. Make it a priority. This is, I almost feel silly saying this, but take time off work. This is a work-life balance. So obviously you need to attend to the life part. But take that time off. We saw that 54% of people leave vacation days unused. Don't be one of those people. Those days are yours. Take them. Take a vacation. My wife schedules vacation out in nature. These are some pictures that we've had just in the last couple of years. And this does two things. One, we're taking a vacation. Two, we're getting fresh air and we're moving around because we're big hikers. But I have to be unplugged. I can't be plugged in any of these places. So I'm a hearty endorser of taking a vacation in nature if you can. I'm also a city guy and I dig that, but if you can get out in nature, that's actually good for you. Take day trips. One of the things that my wife and I do since she retired and since I have a flexible schedule is, if you're one of those people like me who can work from home, go take a day trip or take a couple hours. Go down to, we go down to the zoo because it's near our house for a couple hours, or we'll go to the Detroit Institute of Arts for a couple hours and just take some time away. Do those day trips. Take some. If you can't do it during the middle of the day, do it in the evening. Do it on your day off. Those things are all healthy for your well-being. And there's really nothing wrong with a staycation. There's nothing wrong with staying at home. It's better than going into the office. If you're talking about, needing some time away, take it. There's nothing wrong with being home. You can be productive at home if you have a hobby, if you play guitar, if you make puzzles, if you do whatever you want. Just spend the time with the people that you love. But take some time off work. Those days are yours. Most of us are a part of teams, not everybody. But I think it's true that you can't do it all. And I'm speaking as somebody who often thinks he can do it all. But I can't do it all. And for the most part, we're not alone in this. We have other people who we can share these tasks with. And some of that is learning to trust those people. Some of that is getting buy-in from them to help you. Sometimes that may be going to your boss and saying, look, I have this many hours in a day and I'm doing this many things and I'm not sure how to fill them. I'm not sure what I should be putting down. And I've had that very discussion with my boss where, when I've been overwhelmed, and it's only happened, honestly, a few times since I've been a plant runner for 15 years. And there were weeks where I was working like 60, 70 plus hours for a couple weeks at a time. And I said, I just went, I can't continue at this pace. And this is what's on my plate right now. So what can I give to somebody else? Or what can we just say, yeah, we're not going to do that. And I guess along with that, it's learning to say no. Learning to just say, no, I can't do that. If you're not going to guard your time, if you're going to let somebody, if you're working 50 hours a week and somebody says, I have another 20 hours a week for you, you know, that's not reasonable, really. I mean, I think we all will have those weeks in our industry where, you know, we're kind of all in and, you know, trying to get something out the door, and, you know, you may put in some long hours, but that should be short term. That can't be a regular thing. You don't get any health benefit from working 20 extra hours a week. You don't get 20 hours a week back with your family that when you're doing that. So you need to say no, learn to say no, and then set those boundaries, which we already talked about. So at this point, I'd like to ask some of you, any of you, are there any ideas that have worked for you? When I delivered this in person, I got some really good suggestions from people who were in the room. You know, different ways that people use their calendar, different ways that people know how to rig their smart devices not to bother them, you know, with work things, for example. I'd really be curious to hear some ideas from you. I'll give you one while Michelle, hopefully people are typing or somebody's typing something, but in the interim, one of the things that I learned was I can set the ringtone on my cell phone to silent. Okay, so the default ringtone on my phone is silent. So if I don't know you, my phone doesn't ring. Unless you're in my address book, my phone doesn't ring. And during certain hours of the day, I have it set so nobody outside of my primary address book, which doesn't include anybody at work, can reach me. There's only one exception to that. That's my boss. But she knows better than to call me. She would never call me like at 7 o'clock unless she absolutely had to. So my coworkers, they can't reach me on the phone between like before 9 a.m. and after, I don't know, 9, 10 p.m., something like that. I don't even think it's that late. And I just do that by setting a separate address book for them, and I have that silent, you know, during those hours. And you can do that with any phone, I think. So that's a tip for you. Anything from the peanut gallery?
No, not yet, but I have one. It sounds like maybe you can work from home part of the time. Is that correct, Bruce?
Yes, I'm working from home right now.
Okay, lucky you. For those of us who have to drive in, we're here in Atlanta, and obviously a fairly big city, lots of traffic. Do you have any suggestions for how to handle, you know, the grind of driving in every day, long commutes, and having to fight that traffic?
Well, and I live in Detroit, and I've certainly had that over the years. Since I've been at plant, I drive. I can actually ride my bike to work. It's very close. So I haven't had to deal with that in quite some time. I actually like to drive, even in traffic, because I tend to listen to a lot of music. But that works for me. I think my son listens to podcasts in the car. The problem with listening to a podcast in the car is your mind isn't wired to multitask. So while it's really easy to listen to them when you're on an open highway, it's very hard to hear them or really pay attention to them when you're fighting with traffic. And in Atlanta, I know you have public transportation. It's certainly more than you have in Detroit, which is just horrible. It's like the nation's worst public transportation. If you're in an area where you can do that, then, you know, when you're on a train, that's a different experience. In fact, like when I go to Chicago, we have an office in Chicago. I take the train to Chicago, and it actually takes a little longer than driving, but I can relax. You know, I don't have to fight traffic. I can just sit back and read a book or do some work or listen to a podcast or some music or whatever. So if you're in a position to take public transportation, even though it's an additional hassle and might take a little bit of time, I think there's a payback too. So my big suggestion would be to not drive any more than you need to, but that obviously isn't much help to those of you who are driving 45 minutes one way.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of podcasts though, even though you can't be perfectly attentive, at least you can learn some things.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, podcast. My son got me hooked on that because he was working before he went to college. He was working at our school district here as a custodian, like in the summers. Um, and that's tedious work. He's just mopping floors and sweeping up and stuff. And so he would just have a podcast going all the time, and then he'd come home and tell me all about it. And it was only actually just recently that I decided on any long trip that I take, I'm going to listen to podcasts. And my son lives like 7 or 8 hours away. He lives north of us. He lives on the shores of Lake Superior. And that's a lot of empty highway. I mean, really empty highway, not much traffic at all. So a podcast is perfect because you can attend to it. You're not really using much energy to navigate traffic because there isn't any. So. Any other, nobody's got any ideas.
Somebody, well, it's a question, I guess they just had thrown out the idea of time for myself, how to find that.
Well, so much of that is making it a priority. There was a woman that I used to be a scout leader. She was one of the scout parents, and we had this long talk, and she was complaining that she didn't have any time to exercise, and didn't feel like she had any time to herself. And I understand that she had 2 kids, and she's an active mom, and she was a teacher. But then at the same time, I thought, well, I have a full-time job, and I am a scoutmaster, and I, have a family, and yet I find time to exercise every day. And it's not that I'm brilliant and she's not, it's that I made it a priority, that I said, I'm going to exercise. I put it on my calendar, And I think it's okay to put that kind of time on your calendar, so that people don't jump in on it because they can see it. You can make it private. You can call it whatever you'd like, personal reflection or, critical meeting or whatever you want to call it. But if you put it on your calendar, then people won't jump into that. And I think the other part of that is you need to have a family who respects those boundaries. And I think my wife learned really early on, when we got married, just, a long time ago now, and that I needed that time. That, when I needed alone time, it wasn't that I needed to be away from her. It was that I just needed some alone time. And that meant being in the other room reading a book, or if that meant, going for a run, or just playing my guitar, in the other room. That I needed that time. And she needs her own time too, as it turns out. And I think some people who struggle with that have some people in their life who haven't learned how important that is, or don't, consider it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, that treat the time for yourself as you would any other calendar event and put it on there. And it's just finding the commitment and committing to treating that as any other important work meeting.
Yeah, it's just as important, and I get asked all the time because I do play a lot of music. I probably play 75, 80 gigs this year, I would say. Plus, I'm recording an album. I've already recorded one with another group, and I practice a couple times a week, with different people or groups or, whatever. And I go to watch a lot of music. If I'm not playing, I'm frequently watching music, watching my friends play. And that's a lot of time, but it's time that I guard. That doesn't mean work doesn't take precedent, because it does. That if I, find out I have a team in India, and when I went to India the last time, it was on kind of short notice. So I canceled some gigs because my work job is way, way more important. But outside of that kind of qualifier, it's time that I guard, and it's time that people in my life, understand and are cool with.
Very good.
Any other hands up, or?
No, not right now.
Okay, that's fine.
They're a quiet group.
There's nothing wrong with that. Webinars are kind of weird that way, because it's hard for us to interact, and it's hard for me to see the looks, the blank stares on your faces, or
Right.
Hopefully the smiles now and again. It's just impossible to know. So here, let's just move on then. And I can give you a picture of this, and I don't even know why this was in here. When I talked about this in the room, this is completely throwing me. Anyway, I just want to go through what we talked about again real quick, and then we can just get to general questions if there are any. But I can't reiterate enough the need to define balance. That if you don't know what balance looks like, it's not likely you'll be able to attain it. And you know, I honestly didn't know whether my life was in balance or out, and it was frankly a little out until I really thought about it. And now that it's an intentional thing, I'm able to define it. And I think here's a sub point, and I wish I put this on the slide, but it's something that I brought up in context of building your career. Once a year, my wife and I do what we call our State of the Union. And it's not the state of our marriage, it's the state of where our lives are. And what we talk about do we still want to live in this house? Are we happy in this house? Or do we want to move somewhere else? If we want to move somewhere else, where do we want to go? So what's our living situation? Are we going to buy any cars? Are we happy with our jobs? You know, if we're not happy with our jobs, what can we do about it? Does that mean, you know, I need to reach out to my boss and talk about this or that? Or, you know, maybe it's time to move on. And these are the kind of things that we talk about. But what underlies all of this is both my wife and I understand how important work-life balance has been to our lives. It's the reason why my wife retired, you know, before she was 50. It's the reason I work at the job I work at right now, that I've had offers to work at other places, but they were all kind of places that wouldn't support the kind of work-life balance that I need or want. And these are the kind of things that you should talk about. If you set time aside once a month, my wife and I do it every December, then I think that you'll find your path is more directed, your career path. And I think that if you kind of make finding the happiness in life, which to me is balance, you know, so find some level of, okay, I'm working enough to support the life that I want to live, and I'm also living the life I want to live, then that would be a really healthy endeavor. So that's a side thing. I wish I'd written it down and I didn't, but if you're on the call, that's a bonus tip. Again, unplug. And if you need to go places that kind of force you into that, like I said, we take vacations that force us to unplug. My wife and I go to the gym. You can't really be plugged in there except, you know, for music and things, because you can't take phone calls in the gym. They won't let you do that, at least not my gym. And then, or go to the DIA or the zoo, where you're really kind of away from your computer, away from all those things. So unplug. If you don't set boundaries, people will cross them without even knowing it. So set boundaries, make sure people understand what they are. Please find a hobby and make it be something that you're passionate about. If you don't have anything that you're passionate about, try some things. Pick up a guitar. You know, learning an instrument is really, really healthy for your brain. That's one of the things that I've learned in the last couple of years because researchers are studying such things. It's a great way to enliven your brain. But if maybe you're into photography, you're into drawing, you're into art, you're into whatever, but find something that you're passionate about, because you'll guard that time. Manage your time. So, you know, use the tools that you have to help you manage your day, including, and what we just talked about, I guess, personal time. Set that time aside, put it on your calendar, and make it a priority. Get out of your chair. While you're out of your chair, take a vacation, please. Go somewhere cool, fruity drinks, you know, whatever. Rely on your team if you have one. Just say no. Again, this is hard for some people, but it's empowering. It's something that I've really learned as I've gotten older, because I've never really been good at saying no, but I'm pretty good at it now. I'm pretty good at it now. But it took some time, but it only, you know, it's like any other skill. The more you do it, the better you get at it. I'm not saying you to always say no, but you know if you know where your boundaries are, you'll know where to say no. And then I would say, remember that it's not a race. Life is not a race. You don't get a prize for working more. You know, I guess if you're on the clock, you get overtime. I don't think many of us are on the clock, and I don't think many of us get overtime. So try to enjoy this life that we have, you know, and you're much more likely to enjoy it if you're not working all the time. Okay. So with that, are there any questions?
There are not so far.
Okay.
Such a quiet group today.
It is. Well, you know, I leave people speechless. I'm not sure whether that's good or bad.
I always love this slide. I've seen it before. It's hilarious.
Have you seen me speak before?
On some webinars.
Okay. Yeah. There are always so many questions with this slide, and I can't get away from it. When you try to use another slide, people say, "Oh, we want this one back." It's weird because it's just a question slide, but it's such a weird slide. If anybody has any questions or wants to contact me about this or anything else related to APMP or proposal-y, presentation-y kind of stuff, there's my contact information. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
Well, thank you so much. You have a lot of great tips today and things to think about. And I think it's like anything, the commitment to doing it, to taking time for yourself and making that the priority. So this is really great. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for having me and all the work that you, Michelle, put into this, because I know we had to jump through some hoops to make all this happen. So thanks so much.
Yeah, I appreciate your time and your effort and your patience with it. Just one other reminder to folks that we have a member appreciation dinner coming up for our Georgia chapter, and that will be on November the 5th from 6 to 9 p.m. over at the Wyndham Atlanta Galleria Hotel. And if you'd like to join us for that, we'd love to see you there. And to register, just visit our chapter website, and it's at www.apmp-ga.com. So we'd love to see you there, so come join us. And thank you again, Bruce, for your time and effort. I know you're a busy guy, so I appreciate you doing this for us. It was great.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.